Hello and welcome. This is Pepin from Pepin Reacts. And here today on this episode of Pepin Reacts, we have my best friend, Meader. Meader, how you doing?
Hey, I'm here too.
That's very true. And we're excited for the season finale of a show that we watched called Breaking Bad. What's the season? Well, it's season 2. Episode, 13? Now this episode, I think shit's gonna go down. Why do I think that? Well, simply because, stuff they keep alluding to, like in prior episodes of the season. Like, if they didn't pay it off this season, waited till next season, that'd just be super awkward, right? Right? Now, for anyone who hasn't seen this reaction series, well, my name is Pepin, that's Meader. I watched the series about, 10 years ago, when it was first coming out. I got up to like season 2, episode 6, and I got depressed, and I stopped, because the depression was too much. Meader has seen the whole series through, but his memory's not that great. My memory's not that great either. Remember certain little things. I've heard certain things about the show, but in general, it's a fresh reaction. Now, this is a spoiler-free based reaction, so you should be able to watch along with us, not get spoiled. Meader's going to do his best not to say anything that is going to spoil me or spoil anybody on this, so be anticipated for that. But, I think it's going to be a great reaction. Meader, you have anything to say here?
Really excited for the end of season 2 here and see what the heck happens.
My predictions, as per last episode, is something about, what's his name? Gus, that guy. He's going to take Walt hostage. He's going to kill Skylar and Walt Jr. And that's the thing. That's my prediction. It's a pretty big prediction, and I have a couple skepticism with it. If it doesn't happen this episode, it's not going to happen. But we started a whole thing with the thing in the pool, so that's just alluding to something. And we started like 2 bodies in a bag. That's also alluding to something. Walt's gotten what he wants, so plot-wise, that might have to keep going on. I think my main skepticism with it happening or not is, and this is going to get really kind of meta here, I haven't heard shit about Skylar or Walt Jr. dying. So, I feel like that's something I would have gotten spoiled on. So this is me being super meta on, but at the same time, I have not been spoiled on a huge amount of stuff in the show anyway. Really just 1 or 2 elements. So there's a good chance that it could still happen. And if it does, I'll be very, I don't know how I'll feel. I'll feel very, we'll have to start to find out. So let's get into this reaction. Now, this is going to be a reaction. I don't have to say anything. Okay, that was Breaking Bad, Season 2, Episode 13. Now, this episode, I think it was kind of like the Season 1 finale. So a lot of things happening, but not a lot happening, if that makes sense. It's kind of how I feel. I was expecting something super big and grand, but definitely seems like a lot more just like set up for the next episode. Now, I probably think that watching this episode back, if you have seen the show before, is probably a lot different experience than the first time watch. Because I think I was just getting my hopes up for something like huge to go down. And some, again, I don't want to like undersell it. Some huge stuff did go down, but just not as much as I expected. So it seems like it's going to be a bit more of a slower unveil here. And there's still a couple elements here that will come into play, because I think my idea might still come to fruition, but through a different mechanism than I initially thought. So I want your general thoughts on the episode, Meader.
Yeah, I feel like last episode was a lot more of the big stuff that happened, especially with like Jane's death, and then this is kind of the wrapping up of a lot of things that have been talked about all season, as well as planting some seeds that can grow into the future. And it kind of leaves everything in a very different position than it started in.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely true, and that's kind of how the season 1 worked too. Like, it didn't do a lot to, I don't want to say it didn't do a lot to move the plot forward, but kind of solidified where the plot was, I think is what it is. It does move stuff forward, but it's more like positioning than it is like an explosion, right? Like it's controlled chaos in a sort of weird way. But let's just give like a general recap and commentary on the episode. So, where's the best place to start here? I'm trying to remember how the episode started.
Started with Jesse giving CPR.
Oh, that's right. So Jesse is definitely at his lowest point in the show. He was already like going crazy and essentially dying because what happened with Combo, and then there is some other stuff in there too. I forget what exactly, but his life is just like keeps going down and down and down. And he feels like he's responsible for Jane's death, which is kind of understandable. Sometimes that's a way for people to kind of gain a sense of control over like the uncontrollable events of what happened. Like instead of accepting something tragic could happen just from pure happenstance, of course it had to be me. I'm the one who caused this. In reality here, I think Jane's probably most at fault for her own death. You could say Walt had some culpability in this too, because he could have stepped in and done something. But I think effectively Jane is kind of the main factor here, because she's the one that did heroin, and she actually got Jesse into heroin. Of course, Jesse got her back into drugs, so it's a slippery slope with how far back you want to go here. But what I'm trying to say is I don't think Jesse should feel that culpability necessarily. But feeling that culpability may not be bad, because, doing heroin like that's not a good idea. Unless you're under control of like a doctor or supervisor, because it can go bad like that. But Jesse just kind of keeps spiraling down and down and down. And then so much so that like he reaches out to Walt, tells Walt about what's going on. And then he gets Saul to send like what do you call that guy that was there? Like a cleanup man?
Yep.
And that guy essentially, Saul is essentially just his client, and it's illegal for you to advise your client in that kind of way. That's going to help you skirt the law. They can tell you what the law is, but they can't tell you they can't force an alibi. That's like was it committing perjury or something like that? But if we're being real here, Saul is already involved in the illegal drug trade and everything, so, that's nothing for him. That's probably why he's so good at what he does. That's probably how he gets people off so easy. And it is true. If you get talking to by cops, you shouldn't talk to them. Right? Like, that's what's going to happen. Even if you're, like, innocent from what you're doing, you're going to somehow accidentally implicate yourself in things. It could go all right. In most cases it probably will, but there's some small minority where you're going to give some detail where it's not going to work out. But that clears kind of Jesse of potential implication, it seems. And the father is kind of going through some grief, but what do you think of Jesse's whole guilt in that Meader?
I think it's, you can't help the way you feel. I think it's normal, a normal way to feel. I don't think that there's no truth to it, but for him to say that, like, he killed her, that is categorically untrue. Mm-hmm. But he can feel, feeling that responsibility that's not an unnatural thing, or it's not even a wrong thing to, like, how you feel is how you feel. Yeah. You have to let yourself feel that way and work through it. Mm-hmm. But he was working through it in a very, very bad way.
Yeah, essentially just by doing more and more heroin. That was his solution.
Well, I think he was trying to pretty much die.
Yeah, and he ends up going to like a junkie den, and that worked out kind of poorly. I've heard those kind of places exist, and they don't seem very fun to be at. But Jesse, essentially at a bad place. I don't know where he is now, because last we saw, Walt was helping him out of the place, but we didn't see where Jesse went back to.
Right.
I would want to assume that Jesse would be back at his house, but that seems unlikely given that Jane's father is there, and that also seems as unlikely because he probably feels that connection there, like going back to the scene of like where you think you killed your girlfriend. That'd be pretty traumatic. It could still be the case, like plot wise, because where else are you gonna put him? The only other place I can think of is Saul may have found a place, and maybe a hotel, maybe some sort of hookup there. But as far as we know, Jesse's somewhere, but who knows where. And Walt definitely feels a lot there. It was almost like he was like a kind of connection to the family last episode. It's almost like Jesse's kind of his son.
Mm-hmm. He calls him son at one point.
Does he?
Yeah.
When did that happen?
When he was trying to wake him up. He said it in like a way like a teacher would say it to somebody, but there's also the double entendre there.
Yeah. I could definitely see it because he does have that sort of relationship there, and Jesse even reciprocated with the hug back. Walt's probably definitely conflicted here because I think he probably feels more bad that Jesse feels bad I think he feels more bad that he thinks that he was the result, like he caused Jane's death. I think that's what Walt feels probably the worst about. I think Walt does feel terrible for what happened to Jane, and also the fact that he didn't do anything about it, but I feel like he's more torn up about how that caused a break in Jesse than anything else. Am I off base with that?
No, I agree. I think he is sad that Jesse feels sad. And the same way that Jesse feels responsible for Jane, I think Walt feels responsible for Jesse. Like,
yeah. He's
like, I killed Jesse. Like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Right. And he's seeing Jesse going down this path, and he feels like he probably caused Jesse to go down that path.
Yeah.
And this is kind of getting at the heart of kind of the meta argument going on here, which is that, like, Walt's kind of gotten what he wants, but what he wants is not what he wanted. Like, he wanted the money. I mean, he wanted the family, right? But now he's losing his family. He has the money, but, just an empty heart, like where it once was, it's now removed. And there were some interesting choices with how they were showing bright colors and everything with Walt a little bit later on, which we can get to. I think that pretty much covers the Jesse storyline. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I do want to explore the Jesse Walt Jr. relationship at some point, in the dichotomy there between them as children to Walt.
Mm-hmm. What do you think? You want to do it right now?
Either now or after we talk about Walt's storyline.
Okay.
We could end with it because I think part of like what happens with Walt Jr. in this episode plays into that and can be part of that conversation.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so let's talk about the Walt side, and we'll kind of leap to Walt Jr., and then we'll talk about Walt Jr.'s relationship there, and I'll let you lead that one. So what happened with Walt is he feels very concerned. He does the whole thing. He feels very... When he was walking through that junkie den, he definitely seemed like there's two ways to play that like scene. There's one way to play it where it's just like you're kind of just like kind of grossed out by the people there, and that's kind of the way they played it. The other way to do it is like Walt feels some sort of culpability for kind of like his what do you call it, imposition in the drug trade, right? Like, oh, this is the effects of what I did. It's definitely more like he felt disgusted. He does not like these people.
Yeah.
And he cares about Jesse, and now seeing Jesse there, he's just very, very estranged. But he knows what's going on, and he's got so many like secrets and stuff that he's just like holding in. Like, where else are they gonna go? He can't tell that to Jesse now. He's keeping secrets from Jesse, keeping secrets from Skylar, he's keeping secrets from everybody, and like he's just gonna explode in some sort of something. Oh, hello, kitty. And it's definitely, you can see just the pressure on that just keep boiling up and up and up and up, and it's only a matter of time, I think. What he'll explode into, I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, he also, I feel like the walking through that, it is like him walking through what he's created, like you're saying. But also there could be parallel there to like the walk through hell to save somebody type of deal, where he's in this desolate wasteland, if you will, and trekking through it, and it's dangerous, and he's told not to go in there by the person who brings him there, and I think it fits a lot of the like a lot of the cliches when it comes to a descent into hell type of deal.
Interesting, and that kind of puts him in more of the line of a hero then, like, which he kind of is there. Okay, disagree.
I mean, I find it very hard to think of him as a hero at this point. So
okay,
he's done zero heroic things.
I can think of plenty of heroic things, Meader.
Oh yeah.
No. So let's see. We have
he heroically let that girl die, or
okay. Remember that one line he said to Tuco before he shot him to death or whatever?
Yeah.
I mean, that was pretty badass.
If anything, anti-hero.
Oh. Well,
but no.
Okay, remember that time he took like the thing and it's like an explosion?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's very heroic.
Okay.
I'm just redefining what a hero means.
It sounds like it.
Just got to look badass.
Okay.
But there's this other side of Walt where... So... Sorry, that was my phone going off. So he is getting surgery here, and Walt Jr. is raising money. There's that website. Mm-hmm. And we see Walt is just trying to take care of the baby, and he's getting like very frustrated with Walt Jr. Like he's trying to like feign like care and everything. Mm-hmm. And I almost feel like here, like you'd think he would be more bursting out like he was prior, right? Mm. But he's not. And I think the reason is, kind of going back to blowing the lid, is that he, like sometimes you're so angry that you can't let that anger out, otherwise it'll just explode out, right? Like the moment you kind of let that little bit of steam, it's just gonna all kind of just come out. And he's just feeling so much emotion from this whole Jesse thing, and then some of this other stuff. Like he just has to keep it all in, and that's kind of my interpretation there. And Skylar is super happy about this. But Walt isn't, but he's having to tolerate it. And just kind of, it's almost like season 1 all over again, where he's just having to tolerate these, like, really annoying things and just can't say anything. Otherwise, I don't know what season 1 was, but he just can't do it.
I think that's a really interesting comparison. Because season 1, the annoying things that he was tolerating were all of these little injustices, right? Mm-hmm. There were all of these little things that weren't fair that Walt had to chose to realistically swallow, and they just were what they were. And he all these little injustices. And I think every time he hears that ding, that's how he views it. There's another injustice of my work being passed off as charity to me, being given to me in a pitiful way. And I think that that's super interesting that, he starts with all these injustices that are real injustices that everybody would say that's not fair. That's, unjust. And now that's just how he sees this situation.
So it's an assault on his pride.
Mm-hmm.
I see. And I feel like he's resenting Walt Jr. here, like, quite a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
There was the scene so they're at the dinner table, mm-hmm. and Walt calls Walt Jr., and it's like, call him Flex or whatever it was, mm-hmm. and he doesn't want to do it. He kind of begrudgingly does it, and then him and Skylar kind of team up on that, but it almost feels like I mean, he literally is Walt Jr., and it's kind of almost like he lost Walt Jr.'s, like, he doesn't view Walt Jr. as his son anymore. Mm-hmm. I think he's lost that connection. And we kept on seeing, whenever he was having these altercations with Walt Jr., he would be going to Jesse instead. So, I feel like he's abandoned Walt Jr. as a son, and you could say Walt Jr. kind of has abandoned him in some way, because he's not taking his name. But in another way, like, Walt Jr. has gone full tilt on Walt. It's like, oh, he's the best dad ever. He's great. And he's doing all the stuff with the money raising and everything. I mean, there's some weird subtleties to all this as well. So it is definitely complex. But I feel like he's definitely leaning more towards Jesse as a son than Walt Jr.
Yeah. I feel like that table scene, to me, like, I definitely agree that Walt is offended that Walt Jr. doesn't want to take his name. But to me, something about that scene just kind of felt more like basic teenage rebellion and Walt just being annoyed with basic teenage rebellion more than a prideful thing in that moment. I think it was there because it's also a prideful thing, but to me, that's what it felt like, and it felt like they were co-parenting well, which was great to see, and that's what Walt had wanted. So,
yeah, Skylar did get on like the wagon there, and it seems like Skylar's trying really hard with this too, because I thought she had given up. Every episode I think she's given up on this thing, right? But she hasn't, and okay, now she has, but she hasn't given up necessarily, and she's even trying with Walt. She was definitely backing up what he was putting out there, and it did feel like they're on the same side for once, which was kind of interesting to watch.
Yeah,
and it's kind of interesting because this whole stuff with the donations and everything. The episode prior, I think we saw Skylar confront Walt because Walt was obviously feeling attacked by that. And this episode, Skylar didn't seem to really check in with Walt on it at all. She wasn't at all concerned with what he thought. It was almost kind of like, hey, fuck you. Like, we're doing this. Like, I don't care what your opinion is.
Yeah.
He's just sidelined.
I mean, their whole relationship just continues to flex, but it felt like, to me, like the two of them were like in sync and like they were actually a family at that point, but there was still that division between Walt and everybody else, specifically with the, with money. And it always is, it always has been the biggest driver of between him and his family, money and pride.
I guess part of the money side is connected to his pride, because I'm sure what he thinks about is, if I had played my cards differently, I could have been like a multimillionaire, like my friend in Gray Matter. Yeah. But something happened. Obviously, I think it's his pride that got in the way. We don't know the full story there, but something happened. So his pride is inextricably linked to his sense of money too.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing I do like about some of these Walt scenes is that it made it very clear that he really cares for the baby, and he really does love the baby, and that is what he wants. Like, there's points in the show where I kind of question if Walt would really care about the baby when it was born, but he really does care about the baby. Just, I guess, doesn't care as much about the others. Okay, he cares about Skylar. Walt Jr., that's questionable at this point. But I don't know where I'm going with this. My mind just blanked.
Okay. I mean, you mentioned that scene when Jane's dad put out the clothes, and then it changed shots to Walt with having the baby out on the bed.
Yeah. That
was a really interesting transition.
Yeah, and I feel like it's... You made up the analogy that is like, the whole Phoenix thing from the previous episode, where we have Jane dying and then the baby is reborn. And there's also the analogies there where, Walt and the father, Don, I think is his name, they're kind of alike in a lot of different ways, and they're undergoing kind of the loss of something, like their child. Not technically with Walt, but my initial worry with that scene, I didn't see so much the Phoenix side, but I saw foreshadowing that the baby was going to die. And it's just kind of like saying, hey, this is what happened to Dawn. This is what's going to happen to Walt too, and that the baby's at risk.
It kind of was in a way, wasn't it?
How would you say that?
Because he lost the baby. Skylar took it.
Oh, you're right. So I guess that was. Let me think about that for a second. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you're right. That is kind of a foreshadowing.
To be clear, you're right.
Yeah. I mean, so, well, yeah. I was going more for like a physical death, but a metaphorical death is much more apt because
you put together an entire puzzle, then handed me the last piece, and I'm like, it goes right there. You're like, you did it. You solved the puzzle. Okay.
In case you can't tell, this is after a long day's work, so mental fatigue is definitely there.
Hey, I'm just making sure you get credit for your brilliance. Oh,
I hope. Kitty?
Just the cat's face just in the shot for a second.
I don't think I've ever seen that kind of angle on a cat on a webcam before. Yeah. It's usually always just like the tail or something. But so there's definitely that application there, and Walt's always kind of holding on to the baby too. Like I feel like he knows stuff is going down. And he goes in for the surgery and reveals he has a second cell phone to Skylar. And Skylar, as soon as he hears that, she just like knows something new is up, and her mind just gets set off. Walt Jr. doesn't think much of it. I think Walt Jr. is just playing a little bit naive here. I think he's also a little bit disconnected from his dad. Like, what he's saying about his dad, I don't doubt he believes, but I also think he is more creating an abstraction than dealing with the real Walt in front of him. What you gonna do? Your dad's gonna die from cancer. Are you going to just like view them as like the complete real person that they're there? I don't think you can do that. Realistically.
Yeah.
But there was a little bit of a comparison made there between Walt getting the morphine and him getting all loopy in his thing. Of course, the impetus for him revealing his second cell phone. But it's also a greater metaphor between him and kind of Jesse, or an analogy there. Because that's kind of what Jesse was dealing with and, having all the issues. And Walt seemed very happy in that case. He seemed to be very free of his troubles. And there's some sort of comparison being made there. Do you agree with that?
No.
No?
I didn't really see any comparison there. I can see where you would make that connection, and maybe you're right. I just personally wouldn't make that connection.
All right. I suppose what would it get at exactly is like the wider context.
You go on these drugs, and when you come out, you're missing part of yourself, just like Jesse with Jane.
See, now you're doing what I do.
I'm just filling in the pieces for you, bud.
Well, yeah, I guess you could say it's like that. And Walt's been on like a power trip of a drug to kind of forget about his problems. And now his problems gone, technically, but he's got more problems than he ever had.
Yeah, and I mean, being on, as soon as he got on the drugs, that started all of the problems for him. That started, he lost his entire family from it.
Yeah. Okay, so I said this metaphor was bullshit, but now I take it back. This metaphor is amazing.
Okay. I still don't believe it.
It's like a direct one-to-one correspondence with the plot meter. Come on. But I'm trying to think what else there is with Walt. So that's right. So Skylar gets in there, confronts him, taking off the baby, and Skylar is kind of like being a detective in a lot of ways. She also seems to be aggressive, but also kind of like a little bit sadistic, I think. Like there was, I don't know how to put it, but sexual tension may not be the word. I think it's like an intimacy in there, because she started getting like super close to him in like a weird kind of way. And she kind of played her cards, and Walt just can't tell the truth. Is kind of what was gained there. Like, it's not even like he has a chance to tell the truth and he just can't, right? he can't come clean at all, and that's just super fascinating. What would you say about that? Do you think you agree with my idea of like intimacy and say?
I mean, if any, I think it was her like saying, "There's nowhere else to hide. Like I see you. Like I'm now actually close to you for the first time in forever." So I think it was more of that, to be like, I'm actually looking at the real you now, which has not been the case for a very, very, very long time.
I see. So the intimacy there would be like the intimacy with the real Walt. Like now she's finally close to him, and she doesn't like what she sees.
Yeah.
I guess maybe what I saw, maybe it's not sadism so much as it is like vindication.
Yeah, and I mean, even if she was sadistic, I wouldn't blame her. Like, her husband's been lying to her for how long now? So,
Yep.
I don't blame her for holding some resentment because of that. I think that's perfectly natural and not good long term, but right now it's justified.
Yeah. And I definitely agree. Like, there's certain words that have these negative associations, like sadism or like they're angry and stuff. Like there's emotions, and sometimes they're not bad emotions, right? Sometimes seeing people get their comeuppance is a good thing, and getting some satisfaction out of that, I don't think is always bad. So Skylar takes off. Walt is like, "I'll tell you everything if I sit you down," and essentially, what Walt was doing there was just trying to buy enough time to come up with a good enough lie to explain everything, is my thought. Do you think he would I don't think he would come out with the truth.
I think if it was between him losing his family and not, he would tell the truth.
Why wouldn't he do it back when he was up with Skylar? You think he's like had a chance?
What do you mean when he was up with Skylar?
With Skylar was confronting him. She like tried to get him to say something, and he just didn't.
She said, "Don't deny it," and he kept his mouth shut. He didn't deny it. She didn't say, "Tell me the truth." She wasn't asking anything. She was telling in that entire thing. And I think he was very caught off guard to be like, everything just unraveled in front of me immediately, like all at once.
Yeah. I'm going to draw another comparison with Season 1 Walt here, because Season 1 Walt didn't have any control over his life. Season 2 Walt here is the same exact thing. He does not have any control over his life. Things are just happening to him, and he can't grab anything. But he recovers from his surgery. We skipped ahead a little bit there with the Skylar stuff, but he recovers from his surgery. He's having like a little back and forth with the doctors. He's wearing this bright pink shirt for some reason, which I don't know what that's about. Like the lighting choices are a bit brighter too. It could just be showing his bright disposition on things. I don't know. He feels lighter, something like that. So it was a little interesting part where the doctor with the white coat was talking, and he had some contempt, like very deliberate sort of contempt kind of face to it. So I don't think he respects Walt. You look like you're not agreeing with that.
No, I don't remember that, so
okay.
I'll just take your word for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was subtle, but I think it's there. Because I think they're kind of... I'm guessing the doctors are putting on a face here, but they're kind of pissed off with Walt. And, because Walt's been pulling a lot of shit here. Like, fugue state, and he's not been the easiest patient in a lot of ways. So, I feel like they're probably just like, come on. But, Skylar definitely seemed distant there. And now Walt's kind of lost... you could say he's lost everything. He's got money, though.
Money he can't spend.
And I guess he's getting kicked out of the house, right? Because Hank's gonna help him move, but he's getting kicked out.
Yeah.
Okay. So he'll need to grab that money, I guess, or he could just keep it in there. But then to get it back, or he's gonna have to just hope they find it at some point. This seems kind of. So I assume he's gonna take it. One interesting thing here, I think, is that the one thing, like Walt has to keep in all this anger, but I think the worst of all, like for him, is he's having to keep in his pride too. He can't tell anybody how great he is. that he just made, 1 point whatever million dollars. I mean, I think it's less than that, right? But he's made quite a lot of money. He feels like he's done all the stuff for his family. Like he feels that there. And then just to not be able to, like, show any results for that, like, that's gotta be, like, the worst kind of blow to his pride as well. And there's the scene where he was having that interview with the cameras and the news crew in his home, and it's like he was there dissociating from the event, and there's like these two different Walts there. There's the perception of Walt, which is kind of from the outside in, and I guess that kind of ties in with Gus a little bit there because people perceive Gus a certain way, but the real Walt there is a little bit different, and it's like Walt wants to show people how great he is, but he can't. And then he starts hearing about how, like, he's a good person, he always does the right thing, and then that just gets him to, like, even more just internally destroyed.
Yeah, I mean, they don't even know him.
Yeah. What would it even mean for him to show pride at this point? Like, because appropriate pride is a function of how people perceive you, I think. So you can have pride over anything. Of course, people can be like however they want, but if he doesn't have any social reaction to who he actually is, if it's all just kind of made up, or whatever, like I don't know if I'd feel good. Like I just feel like a phony.
Yeah, it's not good to be complimented and praised for things that aren't true or you don't feel are true.
And from there, I'm trying to think if there's any other big Walt plot lines. We'll get to the whole plane thing in here in a second. Can you think of any other big Walt things?
I mean, in a way, Hank and Fring, Hank and Gus, involves Walt.
Yeah, so Hank is drawing all the lines together. He's kind of connecting pieces. And they kind of alluded to the fact, like very subtly, that Hank didn't think they had caught the real Heisenberg. And Hank seems to be vindicated in his little suspicion there. And he's kind of drawing all these connections. And I think it interplays with Gus a little bit. And then Hank is doing this fundraising for Walt as well. And they're doing some sort of 4K race, or I don't even know, some sort of run, charity event. And then Gus comes in there, and what does Gus see? There goes Meader. I think the cat must have hit something.
add that clip to like a YouTube video of it's seconds before disaster. Just flops over and just crashes the whole thing.
Yeah. Good kitty.
Yeah. So he does the fun run.
Yep. And Gus is there, and then he sees Walt in that picture. Asks a couple questions. He gives some donation to that, and this is.
All right, Tim, get out.
So I think there's still hope for my theory happening here. And I think that for a number of different reasons. But I think the main reason is Gus is probably thinking, shit. Because this is not good. Gus is probably thinking, oh crap, his brother, or his brother-in-law, whatever, is a DEA agent. Did I get snuffed on or snitched on? Like he's now going to be concerned about himself. Like, I thought there was actually enough impetus beforehand, but it didn't seem so in some ways, because why would Gus be willing to give Walt the money unless Gus trusted him in some sort of way? Like, you wouldn't give him the money and then kind of off him, right? Because then you can't get the money back. So I think Gus was actually forming that relationship, or making that deal like legit. But now that Gus might be implicated in this, I think now Gus has like a solid reason to get back. And I think I may have been looking at things a little too far the last couple episodes, because I think writing wise, this is where they're kind of showing their hand that Gus now has an impetus to involve himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that whole scene was pretty cool with all of the shots, because like it starts out with Wanted, and then he's holding up Walt's picture, and it's right under the Wanted thing, and then he's talking about my brother-in-law has cancer, blah blah blah, give money. Then he starts talking about like, here's how everything connects, and he's doing a really good job. Like, Hank is really good at what he does. Mm-hmm. He's calling around to other agencies. He's keeping pins about like where this stuff is. He's connecting the dots. He's seeing through lies that other agents and agencies aren't seeing. And while he's talking about what I think is going on is whoever this is still in this area, but has stopped selling in this area and is selling now only outside this area. And while he's saying that, Walt's face is just being passed around the room on camera the whole time. Walt is in the room. Like, the person they're looking for is right there. Mm-hmm. They're all touching him. They're literally giving him money while they're trying to catch him.
I didn't catch on to that, but that's pretty brilliant right there.
And then to have him in the background while they're talking to Gus, and then Gus actually gives money to him. Mm-hmm. I like Gus's opening of, "Is this one of your agents?"
I didn't catch that, but that's very direct. I mean, yeah. So I think things could still play out the way I was guessing, but we're gonna have to see with season 3. Because it could go in any number of ways, but let's get to the episode close, and then I'll follow up with how my predictions didn't come to be, or may come to be. So Don is having, I'm pretty sure his name is Don, I might be wrong, but Don is having issues with his flight coordinator sort of role, and like, one big theme of this whole show is communication, and his job is literally relaying communication here. And he messes up in some sort of way that causes two planes to crash into each other, it seems. Mm-hmm. Which I think that, from a realistic point of view, is very unrealistic. Like, I think they would catch that, but ignoring that, and also, I think they'd be having him on watch. Granted, everything that happened, I mean, they know. But I'm poking.
Well, we also know they're short staffed.
Is that right?
And he's because he mentioned way earlier when he was talking to Jane, they're hiring anybody right now. They're barely even going through training. Remember?
Oh yeah, that's right.
So they're short staffed, and he's a very senior there. He's been there for a long time, allegedly. So, and his name is Don. It's Donald. Okay, so I'll weaken my stance on that then. I still don't think that should have been possible. It can happen, I know, like, especially if you're coming into landing, and maybe there's an airport that they're actually trying to land there. Maybe that's how it happened. But just kind of up in the sky, that's kind of more unlikely. But who knows? Yeah. Who knows? But anyway, so he fails at this communication. There's something there with failed communication ending in disaster, and so much so that Walt kept his phone in the bath, in the toilet thing. That's very smart. But the plane explodes, and then that's where that little stuffed animal came down from on high, and I don't know how I feel about that. Also, just tying that back to the first part of the episode. This is where the crew comes in and starts doing an inspection there, and the two bodies. So I'm not sure how those two things are interlinked, besides the fact that it may have been some time between those, because it kind of had the sense a little bit that thing in there may have been there for a little bit. No, that can't be true, because we started the fires and explode. Okay, so that's happened relatively recent. So I don't know how I feel about that being the impetus for that thing, because it's one of those things that you can't predict, and I don't know how that could serve the storyline more, besides that personnel are kind of like
like downtrodden, or I'm not trying to what I'm trying to say, but maybe there's murder going on at Walt's house, right? Or maybe they're doing their thing and taking out some people. I don't know what would be happening exactly, but maybe that's the reason why they couldn't go there, because they're dealing with this other thing, this giant other calamity with the plane. So I'm kind of a little bit iffy on it, but I think it'll just have to be a matter to see where it's going to go.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you're just mad that they didn't set it up in a way that you could predict what was going to happen.
I think so. Well, I think it's more like, I don't know why the plane needed to be there and why we had to have this big plane explosion. It's
well,
nothing.
yeah, you don't know. It just happened. We haven't seen like what that means.
I feel like it's kind of almost like you have a show about, I don't know, let's say it's a drama like Breaking Bad, right? Or we're getting into it, it's really great, and then all of a sudden we just focus on like a gopher, and it's just the end of the season. It's just about a gopher. I mean, it's just kind of like.
If the end of the season is like actions Walt took caused this gopher to run out into the road at a specific time and get people killed, like that, as like it's not like it's just a random event, you know, it's all tied together.
I see, but I'm still a little bit iffy with it, because
that's okay.
When you get kind of butterfly effecty with like a plot too much, like you can kind of say anything or do anything. And it is casually, related, but I don't know. I just don't think it adds anything at this point. The only thing I could think they could do with it maybe is that it gives some impetus for cops not to see what happens that goes down at Walt's house, which what's going to go at Walt's house, who knows exactly. But something's going to go down there, and maybe resources will be too spread thin to really deal with that at that point. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing I can think for plot-wise, besides just create like a big explosion. But, and to be clear, I'm being critical here, but this is my perspective from what I know in the moment. It's possible that this plot point just pays off super well. Later.
I mean, in one episode, you could be like, "Oh my, I'm so glad they blew up those planes over Walt's house."
True.
Or it could be the end of the last episode of the whole series, and you're like, what the fuck was with that plane, though?
Yeah.
Who knows? Who knows how you'll feel in a couple episodes?
Yeah. That's something we should revisit here, whether the plane was important to anything. Because if it's not important to anything, or doesn't lend itself to anything down the line, it's kind of like it's a plot device that didn't need to be there. I guess maybe kind of like I had a similar criticism of that scene where they were doing the house tour and they're making meth in the basement, and then they kick everybody out. Like that was a scene that really didn't need to be there, and didn't add anything.
It added a little tension.
Yeah, it's kind of a false tension though. I think it's my main complaint.
I guess. So I had a question from last episode that we didn't really address too well, that I think ends up compounding here depending how you feel about the answer to the question. And that's, did Walt kill Jane? And I know we talked about it a little bit, but for those who feel that he did, it's not too far-fetched to connect dots between Walt killed Jane to Walt killed everybody on those airplanes. Now, whether that's sound logic, whether that's fair, whether it's true, debatable, but I think it's very debatable. Yeah. And at minimum, even if that was the only thing that this plane had to do with, I think that's a great question to discuss is Walt culpable for the death of anybody who died from the plane crashes?
I would probably argue not here. It is still a good question to bring up. It's a point that the writers are trying to bring up too. Like, I think it's more a debate about karma in a way. Because the idea of karma is when negative actions are committed, that they kind of spread out like from them, like radially. and you'll start seeing other negative stuff pop up, like evil begets evil, and I think there's definitely that sort of argument there, and that I could see 100%. Walt having culpability, though, it gets a little bit confusing because it's hard to take that and remove agency away from other people. For instance, if Walt's culpable for that, then was Jane really culpable for her drug use? You could argue that Jane...
No, that's Walt's fault.
How so?
Because Walt cooked the drugs that Jesse did, and then Jesse got Jane into drugs. So it's really Walt's fault.
Yeah, I would say that's... I know we're trolling here, but that's a interchangeability sort of thing, right? Yeah. Would that have happened regardless, is the main question. Like, if Walt was pressuring her into doing drugs and kind of doing heroin and stuff, there's more culpability there. Jesse didn't necessarily pressure her himself, but I could see how Jesse might feel some culpability because he didn't stop her despite knowing her history. But Jesse probably didn't think much of it either.
Would those planes have crashed regardless?
No.
Well.
Yeah.
If that was your measuring stick.
But...
mark it down. There's your measurement.
It sets a dangerous precedence in the United States.
Walt v. Airplane.
You shall be held accountable for the butterfly effects you create.
Only when airplanes and drugs are involved.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely wouldn't have happened otherwise, but, there could have been other things that would happen that could have been bad. Who knows? Maybe Walt saved lives. Maybe the meth he sold to people and had them just get so uppity that they're able to do some awesome shit. Like, maybe they wrote the play they've been meaning to write their whole life. Maybe they cleaned their house. Maybe they dig a hole.
Real life saving shit.
They dug a hole. They hid their money once and for all, and now they don't have to worry. It's in the backyard.
And maybe they dug a hole for a groundhog.
They can dig holes themselves, right? I mean, why dig a hole for them?
Because they're on drugs. The groundhogs, I mean.
Did Walt give them the drugs?
In a way. That's the question, isn't it? Is he responsible for everyone who buys the drugs?
Is Walt culpable for groundhogs?
We ask the tough questions here on Pepin Reacts. Like, is Walter White culpable for groundhogs?
Hey, you asked it, not me.
No. Okay. You know what? I'll take credit for it because I think it's a very important question.
And this is the big difference between, say, Meader and Walt here, because Walt has that sort of pride. Meader, it's not there.
No pride, no shame, baby.
So, if you liked this reaction, definitely leave a like. If you want more questions, discussions, whatever, who cares, just let us know in the comments. They'll be there eventually. We plan on doing 2 follow-ups to this. One will be a little thing where we discuss the season end, and the other thing we'll be doing a character ranking for our thoughts at this time. Eventually, we'll do that for like each season just to see where we kind of stand, and then we'll kind of see where things kind of shift from there. That might be kind of just fun, and because I don't think people really do character rankings like before a season ends. I mean, at least for a show that already exists, they always do it at the end. So I think this might be kind of cool.
I'm excited for that.
All right, so until next time, you guys definitely have a great rest of your day, and I react, you react. This is. Have a great day. Peace.